Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. Welcome to TBP, the Biblical Perspective channel. Glad you're here with us today. And we're on to a very important topic. And we know many people are asking this question, dealing with finding your purpose in life. And I hope as we go through this study that you'll be blessed. Please like and share and subscribe and bring people who may want to hear or are thinking about, what is their purpose in life. Before we go into it, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for being here with us, being with TBP. And I pray as we go through this study that those listening will be enlightened on what is their purpose in life, how do they find their purpose in life, and why have you got a purpose for their life. So, Father, thank you for using TBP. In Jesus' name, amen. Yes, so Colleen, dealing with finding your purpose in life. Have you found your purpose in life?
I'm not entirely sure, Ruth. How about yourself? Have you found your purpose in life?
I think I have, but then it might change according to God's will, who knows? But right now, I think I have.
Okay, that's great. So what usually happens in life, Ruth and Pedro, is that from time to time and often we're conscious of ourselves, and also we have specific dreams. So many of us think about the future, and within that future, we think about the life that we want for ourselves. So even though most of us do not know perfectly how things are going to unfold, we have cherished ideas about, for example, the profession we want. We want to climb the career ladder, have a particular profession that we want to pursue. Often we think about, for example, the type of people we want to marry. Maybe people want to marry and have 2 children or have 1 children or have 1 child, And often people think about where they want to live. I want to live in this country, in this neighborhood, in this house. So often people have like a desire and an aspiration for their lives. Now, the problem is, Ruth, is that there are many things that we care about, and often we care about these particular things and we want to accomplish them. But the truth is, Ruth, and that people come to realize that eventually that they're surprised to find that for many, when they discover that after they achieve all of these goals, they've achieved all of these things, they somehow still feel very dissatisfied about the things that they have, and they still feel that they lack a sense of purpose. So they've achieved the career, they've achieved the job, maybe they've achieved a particular life that they've planned for themselves, but they still lack this sense of purpose. Today, during our study, Ruth, we want to deal with what the question of finding your purpose in life and what that means from a biblical perspective. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, which is really exciting. So Pedro, sorry, were you going to say something, Ruth?
No, Sam, that's good, and I think it's going to interest a lot of people. So thank you for that introduction.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, it will do. I'm interested to find out the answer to this from a biblical perspective. So to get into this, Ruth, my first question, Pedro, to yourself is why are so many people feeling lost when it comes to finding their purpose in life?
So this is a good question. But first of all, let's establish something. While many people would not openly confess that they don't have a clear understanding of what their purpose is, they would do everything to somehow project that they know exactly what they're doing and where they're going. Many more. And we are going to speak from a truth perspective of what is happening within us. This is going to be an honest conversation. So some people would not admit that this is the case. They don't have a clear understanding of what their purpose is in life. Many more have asked the question, why am I here? And many more are still asking the question, regardless of what is happening in their lives. So, what is happening in your life? The first thing we need to deal with does not do away, regardless of how successful you may think people are in whatever they're doing, that does not do away with the question of purpose. So many people, many more people have asked this question, why am I here? And this question indeed has been asked from the dawn of days in the history of humanity. In fact, if you check with professional thinkers, the people they call or we call philosophers, they have made that question central to their quest or about life. What is the meaning of life? Because this is really what it is about. And if you are one of those people who think that this is irrelevant to you, I would invite you to still take the time to think about this. Now, you asking the question, why do so many people feel dissatisfied in life? You see, when you look at what is happening around you on this planet, the natural world, everything that surrounds you, you realize that there is nothing random. Everything
Yes.
has a reason to be there. And you might be the only thing in this universe, and I'm not saying people are things, it's a figure of speech. You might be among the natural world that you see, you might be the only thing in this world thinking, wait a minute, I can see this is for this is for that, that has a reason to be there, and so on and so forth. But I'm feeling within myself that I'm out of place, regardless of what I have achieved, regardless of what I have done. So this question is inherent to our nature. So what do philosophers say? Some of them would say, if you consult with them back from ancient times, the well-known philosophers basically say the meaning of life, which is the purpose of life, is to live a good life, to live a happy life. And that's all there is to it. Now, that begs the question, what is a good life? What is a happy life? How do you live a good life? How do you live a happy life? So people work hard, people spend their earning, they work hard to earn, they spend their earning in buying the things that please them. They even spend the money they don't have to make it into happiness. And at the end of the day, they realize that they're still looking for a meaning to what they're doing. So you can see the question is a deep-seated question in the psyche of humanity, and not being able to have a clear understanding of it, it brings other people and other philosophers to conclude that, you know what, life has no meaning. Therefore, trying to look for a purpose in your life is foolish because there isn't any purpose. But at the same time, you look around you, as I said, and you see that everything, if you take time to study, if you don't remain ignorant about the things you're looking at, you see that everything, nothing is random. Therefore, you are caught in that situation of seeing purpose all around you and inside of you, lack of purpose, regardless of what your life looks like from the outside. Some people admit it, some people don't. And the people who do are the people who allow us to think, why is this so? Why are some convinced that they have found their purpose and others are completely lost in that experience of life?
Okay. That's quite interesting, Pedro. As you were talking, two things came to my mind. First, I've been watching like some videos recently, and they were saying that in order for people to live a long and healthy life, one key element of that is to have a purpose. So apparently, if you lack purpose, or if you haven't got something to say live for, you're more likely to die, which is really interesting, because it just goes to show how important purpose is. And then the other thing I was thinking about as well is I was listening to a discussion between two individuals, and this lady was saying on YouTube that many people go for a particular job because they think, oh, this job will give me a lot of money, and a lot of money will make me happy. But in that job, they're extremely unhappy, and they're saying that, well, you should pursue a career that fits into your purpose, or what you were created to do, and then you'll be happy. So that's really interesting, because those points that you've made feed into that narrative. So my question is, based on what you've just said, is you've talked about this reality we are in, and we all see it, but how does that explain why it is like that? So is there a particular reason why people may feel lost when it comes to understanding their purpose in life?
Yes, there is. And I'd like you to look at the text, because we're going to talk about this from a biblical perspective. I'd like you to look at the text that is found in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11 for me, please. And I'd like to say that what we are going to see may not be something that you are acquainted to, so it might sound a bit strange to you, because we had to some extent dealt with that question before. But today we want to look at this from a different perspective and go into more depth of the subject of purpose. So read for me Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 11, please.
Okay, I'm reading from the King James Version, and it says, "He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he hath set the world in their hearts, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end."
Thank you. Now, how do you understand this text? Obviously, the elements we are interested in here is two things. The fact that there is a creator, according to this text, who made a creature. The creator is God, and the creature is man. And there is a particular interaction between them, and a setting in man by the creator that somehow is linked to what we are discussing. So I'm asking you, how do you understand this passage right there?
It's basically saying that, God makes everything beautiful in its time, but ultimately we don't know and see and can comprehend everything that God's doing, because God's obviously God, who's all knowing, all seeing. He knows the past, the present, and the future, but we only know our sphere. So it's basically saying that really we don't really know anything, only God knows everything.
Okay, so the text says he has put he has put the world in their hearts so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Now, this text right there could be technically considered as one of those difficult texts in the Bible. I know it may not look like it, but let me take you on a path that might help you to realize that. Let's look at the text in two other different versions. Same text.
He hath made everything appropriate in its time. He has also set eternity in their heart without the possibility that mankind will find out the work which God has done from the beginning even to the end. And that's a New American Standard Version. Now, the New English translation says, God has made everything fit beautifully in its appropriate time, but he has also placed ignorance in the human heart so that people cannot discover what God has ordained from the beginning to the end of their lives.
Now, what do you think about those two translations of the text you read from the beginning? Do they help you understand? Are they saying the same thing? Do they convey the same message? What do you get, for instance, from the net? How do you see it? Is it the same message that you understood from the first one?
I think there's obviously more details here. So, for example, in the New English translation, it says, "But he has also placed ignorance in human heart, so that people cannot discover what God has ordained." So that kind of like makes it puts a bit more context there, because it again indicates that the human heart doesn't really know or understand everything that God's doing, nor can it. Well, I think that's what that's potentially saying.
Okay.
Because when I'm looking at the New American Standard Version where it says he has set eternity in their hearts, but then the NET says ignorance, and those two are two different concepts to me, because one's eternal, but one is ignorant in that they do not know what is going on in the mind of God.
All right, and I'm glad you picked this up because it is actually a major feature in this text that we need to look at. Now, if you think about God being the creator, and he is the one setting up how man is going to live his life. And we're talking about man looking for his own purpose within the context of being a creature of God. And the text says, in one, he has put the world. That was the first one, the world. Can we understand the world? Okay, the second one says, he has set eternity in their heart. How do we understand eternity as limited beings whom we are? How do we understand eternity? How do we comprehend the concept of eternity? Have we ever experienced the concept of eternity? Now, if we ask ourselves those questions, we can move on to the New English translation now and perhaps begin to understand the dynamism of that version when it transforms the word world into eternity, and finally ignorance, because you can't understand the world. We've been on this planet for how many years, and we're still doing research about everything, right?
Yes.
And we keep on scrapping things to get new ones
Yes.
about the same thing we've been studying for thousands of years. Okay?
Yeah.
And we
Yes.
are the greatest minds. I'm talking about
That's true.
philosophers, researchers, doctors, professors,
Yeah.
all these people. And now the NET is saying, look, that amounts, what God has done amounts to ignorance. He has somehow put in your mind the inability. This is important, and I did say to you that we were going to look at this from a different angle. He has put in you the inability to understand your very life.
Yes.
This is extremely important, and if we are honest with ourselves, right there,
true,
we should we should say true, because that's exactly what is happening. Now, let me look at a different version with you. Same text.
Okay, so I'm reading from the New Living Translation. Yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. And the Young's literal translation, the whole he hath made beautiful in its season, also the knowledge he hath put in their hearts, without which man findeth not out the work that God hath done from the beginning even unto the end.
Wow, things seems to get even more complex. And I did tell you that this text is one of those texts which we could technically qualify as a difficult text in the Bible. So now I want you to, without taking too long, how do you find those versions? Let's keep them there. What do you see? For instance, in the NLT, what is the message?
It says, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So going back to this whole idea of purpose, it just again highlights that we don't know and we can't see the beginning from the end.
Okay, and let me stop here. When you see God's work, you tend to think about something celestial. You tend to think about something in the universe. But let me tell you, this is not celestial. This is not the universe. This is you. Because
and I was going to say that.
God's work. And if that is you, the text clearly is saying here, you cannot understand what God is doing in your life. Of course, we're looking at this from a Christian biblical perspective. Okay? You cannot, as a human being, as a creature, understand what God is doing in your life. So when you sit there and you pretend that it's all figured out, tell me, what is it? So that's
it's
one version.
Yeah, it's in the moment, and I'm loving what you're dealing with here, Pedro, because when I'm thinking even about my own life, I don't know what's going to happen even the next 10 minutes. So they might knock on the door, or we just don't know. We just know in this space that we're in now what is happening in the here and now. So yeah, this purpose thing, it's moment by moment for me.
Well, let's move into this. Now, I want you to go back to this text and tell me what difference you see from all the versions that you've already read with the YLT. What does the YLT say?
Right. What I'm picking up here is said he hath put it in their heart. That knowledge he hath put in their heart, without which man findeth not out the work that God hath done from the beginning even to the end. So he's even controlling what knowledge we have, but yet we think we've got all the knowledge. But even those that, as you mentioned, the philosophers and the Stoics and all of those people, even though they think they have the ultimate knowledge, they haven't, because whatever God has put in their heart, that's what they're limited to. So no one person knows everything, even though they may have what they call ultimate wisdom.
All right.
But Pedro, I look at it and I wonder, when it says here, without which, if you can put the text back up, it says, without which man findeth not out the work that God hath done. And it dawns on me, and I'm wondering if it's to do with the fact that the lack here is that we're not finding God's purpose.
All right, you got the difference here. You see, let's keep this text there so that we can see it. You have put your finger on it. The YLT is really different from even the NLT that you have here, but all of the others. The reason for that is a bit technical, and that is in short, except for the YLT, all the different versions that you read are following the Greek Old Testament text, whereas the YLT is following the Hebrew text, which you could understand in this way as well as another way. But what is very clear, and what you put your finger on, is in the YLT. While all of those translations are clearly stating that it is God who is in control of this world, and that is beyond the human capacity to understand what is going on, the YLT is saying, by saying the without which, the YLT seems to be suggesting that there is a condition for you to understand what is happening. And that condition is unless you get insight from God. Is that what you were getting at, Colleen?
I think so.
Yeah, the YLT is saying, I mean, you can read it again. Also, that knowledge he hath put in their heart, without which man findeth not out the work of God. So basically, it does say God is the one who is able to inform you as to what he is doing in your own life. Otherwise, like all the other versions seems to say very clearly, you are without that knowledge, which is also true. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
So what that is telling us concerning your question, and your question, what was your question again?
Oh, sorry, my initial question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
your
basically,
question.
I'm saying, is there a particular reason why people may feel lost when it comes to understanding their purpose in life?
Okay, so what that tells us, all that we have said right there, what that tells us, and we need to get this because that's the truth. What that tells us is that it is not a natural thing. It is not a thing that is within us, within our reach to understand. It's not an easy thing. It's not a human thing. It's not a natural thing. Listen carefully. For us to understand appropriately what our purpose is in this life. Contrary to what we are conditioned to believe from the time we are born, and we are introduced to a system within which you are the one in charge of what's going to happen to you. You are the one in charge of defining the purpose of your life, as some philosophers have said. This text is telling us this is beyond our human capacities. Understanding why we are here at a practical level is beyond our human capacities, because we do not control that department. It belongs to God. And unless God is telling you this is what it is, you will not reach the conviction. And that goes even further. So that is why it would be a natural thing for us, even for Christians, to be in a situation where they do not understand what their purpose is in life. It is not a strange thing. It is actually in line with how we are created and how this world is meant to function according to God.
Yeah, you made a good point there, Pedro, because even Adam, when he was created, God told him what his purpose was. He said, go forth and multiply, tend the garden, take care of and look after. He told him his purpose. Adam didn't say, oh, my purpose is this. So I'm just thinking, if that's the case, we've all got the same responsibility to listen to God's voice, to find out what our purpose is, and not think the world is what we have to emulate to do with purpose.
So, Pedro, I'm not quite sure, and I'm not quite clear where we are with this. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, like, I've witnessed, and I see all the time, people who, for example, have their vision boards and they've visualized their dream life, and suddenly they're achieving this life. Or you know this, ain't it, Ruth? Or they manifest the career of their dreams. They manifest the house of their dream, the talking arrangements of their dream, the man of their dream, the family of their dream, Ruth. So if what you're saying is true, Pedro, why do so many people seem to know their purpose and are like just totally confident about it? This dream life they've manifested, or this vision board life that they've created. How is that the case then, that people are so confident about their purpose?
There are different reasons for that, and one of them might just be delusion. Okay? No, I'm serious. I'm serious. One of those might just be delusion, because there are people. Just look at the state of the world. Just look at what the direction in which the world is going. Just look at the list of professions that exist. People who wake up in the morning and have only one goal in life is to create weapons to destroy people in life. And they pour into this all of their abilities and capacities as human beings, because they went to school, they went to university, they went to places of higher learning to know how to implement the formulas that they integrated in their minds to go and do this. And they feel fulfilled. Why? Because it brings home the salary they want. It brings home the confidence that they want to portray around their peers, and so on and so forth. I could go on with the list. Now, if somebody like that comes and tells you, and I just went for an extreme example, but this is across the spectrum, all right? Somebody like that comes to you with confidence that they have found their purpose in life, right? What are you going to say when you look at the effect of what their purpose in life is on humanity? So let me, this is not part of my answer. This is just to substantiate what I said about delusion. Okay? Now.
Okay, yes.
Now, your question is, why is it that some people are confident that they have found their purpose in life?
Purpose,
and you can't tell them,
very confident.
And you can't tell them no. And you don't have.
Also, Pedro, they'll point to their apparent success, however they define success, and always how society finds success, to let you know that they are achieving their purpose?
That's exactly the case. Now, here is my answer to this. Again, from a biblical perspective, and we're speaking to Christians mainly in terms of the angle we're coming from. Now, although we say that we are human beings, not human doings, in reality, we concentrate much more on the doing than
Yes.
the being. We value ourselves in the light of the activities we are taking part in or are included in. That has nothing to do with being, that has to do with doing. And as we look, as you said, to your point, at what we're doing, even Christians, and people seem to like it, it seems to yield the results that we are expecting. Doesn't matter if our expectations are right, correct, just, righteous, because the expectations come the way we like it, we take this as fulfilling our purpose. But let me tell you something. In case you don't know it, we are human beings. And if let's say you're a Christian and you live that sort of life. If what you are doing at the time comes from God, sooner or later, you will be back to the question, what am I here for? You know why?
Yeah.
Because God's plan changes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you may want to ask me, how do you know
Yes.
that God's plan changes all the time? Well, we already know from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11, that you need to keep up with God by Him giving you insight so that you may understand what is going on in your life. So if everything was just set at the beginning forever, why would you need to do that? Why would you need the insight? And you go through life, the Bible says, 70 and 80 for the most resilient among us. That's a long time. I mean, relatively a long time. Now, where do I get the idea that you will be back? If you feel that you're confident now that you're fulfilling your purpose, and I know this is the case at a practical level, I know you will be back to the question of purpose again, in spite of your confidence. And how do I know that? Read for me Ecclesiastes chapter 3, same chapter, this time verses 1 to 8, please.
For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace.
You see, notice something. This passage is just before the passage we started with, which is verse 11. So that means verse 11 follows after this. And what does it say? It says that we are seasonal beings. There is a time for everything in our lives. That means we move in stages. I just turned 21.
Again?
No, not again, the first time. I just turned 21 prophetically.
Okay.
But even prophetically, I wasn't born 21. And do you think that the things that I do at 21, these are the things that I did when I was 1? Do you think there have been changes?
Plenty.
You see, we are seasonal beings. As I said, we like to focus on the doings, but we are human beings. And the different stages we are at must reflect the fact that we are seasonal beings in our activities. That means from birth to death, changes keep occurring. And those changes can go from one thing to its opposite. And this is in the passage that you have just read. It's just 7 couplets as an example of how seasonal we are in one life. One life. You with me?
Yeah.
Now, let me take an example for you to support that. If you take Moses, for instance, we were talking about people who are confident that they have found their purpose. And I'm saying if they are confident and what they're doing comes from God because they focus on the doing, they will change sooner or later. Let's take the example of Moses, and they will be back to the question, why am I here? Let's divide Moses' life in 4 stages. The first 40 years, he was prepared to become a great military leader. Everything he did, the purpose was towards that. The first 40 years. And perhaps eventually become Pharaoh. We don't know. But what is for sure is he was preparing to become a great leader of Egypt in whatever capacity. That's one stage. The second stage, from 40 to 80, what was he doing?
Being prepared by God for his purpose.
Well, you say, because you know the story, you say he was being prepared by God.
But he was a shepherd, wasn't he?
He was just in a shepherd for 40 years,
right.
like away from people, tending to sheep.
All right. So for 40 years, he was becoming an expert in husbandry. For 40 years, he was becoming an expert in going after sheep. A shepherd. A farmer. For 40 years. You with me? That was his life. There is a time for everything. And then the last 40 years, what was it?
It was him shepherding a whole nation of people out of Egypt.
Okay, we can choose to see it like that.
Yeah.
Rebellious people.
So we can choose to see it like that. But if you look at it from the last 40 years, he was in the wilderness walking day and night, not all the time, but walking sometimes the day, sometimes the night, to lead the people of God, to the promised land, which was the objective. And guess what?
He didn't
It
see
didn't
it.
even get there.
That's right. He didn't.
So I'm asking you, where would he have been in his mind in terms of his purpose in life in the first 40 years? Where
In
would
the
he have
castle,
been in his mind? Sorry, go
in
ahead.
the palace. He'd have been in the palace hoping to be the next pharaoh until he did what he did.
Yeah, he would have been confident about his capabilities and his abilities, his training, his experience, his upbringing to give him the best life that he saw for himself.
Okay. And then brutally, things changed. So where would he have been in his mind in terms of his purpose when he was spending the first decade, the second decade, the third decade tending
Confused.
sheep?
Yeah, he would have
Confused
felt.
and wondering.
Yeah. Also, he would have felt he was behind in life. He would have felt that he's not meeting his purpose. He would have felt that his life is meaningless. He would have felt as though he's not achieved anything. Maybe he would have looked at Facebook and Instagram and saw everyone else, you know, in the palace achieving everything and thought, oh, my life is just insignificant in comparison to everyone else's.
Yeah, we have got
We
some
can
comments
include
going
all
on.
of that.
Yeah.
We can include all of that. But what I want to tell you is his mind would have been somewhere else than where it was the first 40 years. Why?
Yeah.
Because things have changed. And then the last 40 years would have been much of the same. Because for 40 years, God didn't tell him anything about going and getting the children of Israel from Egypt to the promised land. All right? And even when God did, the purpose was to bring them to the promised land, to which he did not, in which he did not set a foot. And that's why he pleaded with God, let me go in there. And God said, you ain't going nowhere. And don't talk to me about this again. I'm not making this up. So the point I want to make here is things change constantly in God's plan. So when you sit there, if you focus on the doing changes. Unfortunately, when we talk about purpose, we're just talking about doing. And I'm trying to say we need to elevate that conversation to its right level, because we are not human doings, we are human beings. And the Bible teaches us just that. Now, I want you to read for me, because time is flying. Why would that be so? And why would it not be a strange thing that in your mind you would ask yourself the question, what am I here for? Even if you are successful in this, that, and the other, because reality is that question will keep dawning on you. And there is a particular reason for that, and that is you are a human being. Read for me, even if you are a Christian, and particularly if you're a Christian, read for me Proverbs 20, verse 24, please.
Okay, from the King James Version. Man's going are of the Lord. How can a man then understand his own way? And from the New English Translation, the steps of a person are ordained by the Lord. So how can anyone understand his own way? And then the New Living Translation, the Lord directs our steps. So why try to understand everything along the way?
True.
And I want that to sink. Unfortunately, we don't have a long time left, but we want to go through this. You see, it is not a strange thing to come back to the question, regardless of where you are in life. And if I had time, I would tell you about a story, but I don't have time. But it's not a strange thing to come back to the question, why am I here? Because you might just be at that stage that reflects a transition into your doing. Are you with me?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
this text is telling you, don't try. And this is in line with what we've seen from the beginning. I know it's unnatural because we are conditioned from birth to think, and philosophers have made it clear, we are in charge of our own future. We are, and yes, to some extent, we make decisions that we will have to face in terms of consequences in the future. But that's not what this is addressing here. We are not in charge of our own way, and not only that, when we submit to Christ, we cannot understand what God is doing. We need to be informed by Him, and that it is His prerogative to tell us or not tell us what is going on. Another text I want you to read for me is Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 23, please. I'm racing for time.
I know, Lord, that our lives are not our own. We are not able to plan our own course.
We are not able to plan our own course. If you are too confident about your purpose in terms of what need to take place, you need to be careful about that. This is what this text is trying to tell us. You need to be careful about the confidence that you feel and you seem to experience when you feel that you are completely in control of what is happening. And that is to say, again, it is not a strange thing for you to come back to the place where you are asking yourself, what is it about me now? What do I have to do? So you need to be mindful of that. You need to be careful about that. Another text that I want you to read for me is Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, please.
It says, reading from the New English Translation, "For we are His creative work, having been created in Christ Jesus for good works that God prepared beforehand so we can do them."
All right, so I want you to keep this text there for me and just think about this. We usually see this text within the context of ecclesiology, Christology, theology, doing with soteriology, salvation, and things like that. But let's take that within the context of the discussion that we are having right now. This, when he says we are his creative work, having been created in Christ Jesus, that means both initially and lately, in terms of having been redeemed. Okay?
Yes.
That when you have been redeemed and you become a follower of Christ, that must affect your thinking about your own life, both the being and the doing. But what this text is saying, if you bring it back to me, it says, for good works that God prepared beforehand. We tend to see that as good spiritual works, like be good, be kind, be faithful, and so on and so forth. And yes, this is part of it, but it is also part of the doing. And
Yes.
notice that, so both the being and the doing, but notice it says works. Think of this within the context of stages and seasons in life. That means we will always be thinking about what we are supposed to be doing at different stages. And
True.
we need, as long as we remain in connection with God, that needs to be part of our understanding that this is how it works. God's plans change, and they change depending on his own mind within our one life in terms of the doing. What I'm doing now, I may not be doing this tomorrow,
Yes.
but I will come to a point where I will have to ask the question, what am I supposed to do? And I will do that within the context of purpose. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds like a pregnancy.
I don't know about that.
Different stages.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
So, Pedro, just to move on, because of the time, and you spoke a lot about being and doing and being and doing. So, I just want to find out more about the being. Like, what are you trying to get at here?
All right. This is a good question. And I think we need to use the rest of the time just to elaborate on this. So we said that the doing will change. It's not whether it's gonna change or not. It will change. There is no evidence that it will not, and there is every evidence that it will. Why? Because there is a time for everything, and sometimes the one thing and its opposite. Now, in terms of the being, that's the consistent part in the whole process. Read for me Isaiah 43, verses 6 and 7, please.
I will say to the north, hand them over, and to the south, don't hold any back. Bring my sons from the distant lands and my daughters from the remote regions of the earth. Everyone who belongs to me, whom I created for my glory, who I formed, yes, whom I made.
Now, keep the text there for me and see the different, how emphatic this text is. He says, he speaks to Israel within a particular context. Now, that context also theologically applies to every child of God, sons and daughters. God made us with the purpose of reflecting him or being like him, whatever we are doing. Now, notice I did not say to be him. I said to be like him in whatever we're doing. This is the being aspect of purpose that keeps us from worrying about our doing purpose.
Amen.
And the last text I want you to read for me quickly is Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13, please.
Reading from the New Living Translation. That's the whole story. Hear now my final conclusion. Fear God and obey his commandments, for this is everyone's duty.
Here is how I will conclude. You do not have to struggle with the question of finding out your purpose in terms of doing if you first live to obey the God who made you. And when doubt arises within you as to what it is that you are supposed to be doing, trust your relationship with the Lord, for it is one of obedience to his voice. And that's all you need. That's the conclusion.
That is lovely. That was an excellent
Pedro.
study. Yeah, thank you, Pedro, and thanks, Colin, for those questions. They were very, very insightful. They were very insightful. Yeah. We had a lot of comments.
Unfortunate that I was going to say it's unfortunate we didn't get a chance to look at all. We had so many comments,
but I'm gonna go through a few as they kindly put them in. Right. So Desna Lower said, sad affair, Colleen, as often people get to 80, the most, and looking back, they regret the life they've lived. I'm wondering whether we covered this under a different topic, going to of interest. And Nicole says, I'm excited about this topic as it is something that I'm currently dealing with. Thank you, Nicole, for that. And then again, I'll go down to some more. Tracy said, we can't see into the future, which is Tracy, absolutely right. Nicole said, brilliant study. Thank you, Nicole, for that encouragement. We always need it. And Desna mentions again Ecclesiastes 12, verses 13 to 14. And I think it is Colossians 1, verse 14 to 18. It's interesting as when the grasshopper makes a noise that is not comfortable. Can one truly say they have fulfilled their purpose, the whole duty of man, serve? And Winsome, we saw her comment come up. She said, for 40 years, he was also becoming a father and a husband to Zipporah also. And Nicole, once again, thanks for your support. You've said, praise God, such a wonderful and encouraging study. So thank you for those lovely comments. And just keep praying for TBP, actually, that we will go out into a wider audience, because if you're enjoying it, please put a thumbs up, because it will draw other people to the Biblical Perspective channel, and they will get a blessing also. So please like, share, and subscribe, and press the notification bell as always. And by God's grace, we will be with you again next week for another lovely study with TBP. So thank you, Pedro and Colleen and Simon, and thank you, viewers. Bye-bye.
What is REBU? The Research Institute for Biblical Understanding, a learning and training center for all those who want a deeper, stronger, clearer, and more informed understanding of the Bible in all its various and important aspects. It's there to develop and equip you with proper skills in the field of biblical studies. Regardless of where you're at now, REBU will take you further on that journey to reach your full potential in understanding the Bible. We are now in the process of registering people for the different plans and programs that REBU offers. Wherever you are in the world, REBU is there for you.